What's going on, guys? It's your boy Logic. Welcome back. Make sure if this is your first time, you hit that like and subscribe button. Today, I have a very honored guest, a friend of mine, an artist, a person who honestly started a culture and motivated so many others to think for themselves and to honestly be their best version and bring their art to life. Mr. Asaad Morales, please introduce yourself.
What's up, everybody? What's up, everybody? I'm Asaad Morales. Friend of Logic now for what, 2 decades? Just about.
Over 22 years.
Yeah, bless. You were.
Shit.
I had a full head of hair.
You.
I wasn't gray.
You. I had braids, bro.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, like
you know, I'm considering that. It's a good look. It fits you well. But you know, you didn't go gray.
Now I'm starting to a little bit, but you know what? I like the salt and pepper, man.
The silver came in. Right?
Yeah.
You know, I'm enjoying it.
The wisdom came in.
I'm doing the Hispanic dad, the comb over. I'm gonna see how long that rocks. You know,
I like it though.
It's a thing. You know, we'll see what happens.
You know what it reminds me
What?
of? It reminds me of remember Selena, the father. You know how he had.
I mean, I'm gonna take it because that's Edward James Olmos,
Yeah,
which is one of my favorite
that's an
actors.
OG. That's an OG.
Dude, from Blade Runner going up,
Yes,
all the
sir.
good movies.
Okay.
So talk to me.
So for you guys, this is an honor for me
Oh,
because
thank you. It's an honor for me. I mean, I've seen you grow up. This is great. We have professionalism. We got a logo now. You know,
it's beautiful, ain't it?
you're using Sennheiser.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
sir.
Yeah, that's it.
So for you guys to understand, Miami has a deep-rooted culture. A lot of us grew up here. A lot of people that you see here now are not from here. So Asaad is a pioneer when it comes to art and tattooing. So as I break that into you, how are you?
I'm doing well, actually. The world has been very, very kind. The universe has shined upon me. I mean, can't complain. Good old day. I got to hang out with you. Things are going good, man. Things are on the up.
It's crazy how things are like aligning and going smooth. You have your little, your hiccups and your road bumps.
You know, there's a guy I'll never forget. He told me one day, ages ago when I was tattooing, he goes, life is like poker. Mathematically, you can't always be down, but you got to stay in the game long enough to see that happen. And I feel like in life, if you don't have bad, you can't enjoy the good, because if everything, it's like the Matrix. Why did the first Matrix fail? Because everything was perfect. You need life to kind of go through that flow, and that's just part of the challenge, man. You know?
I like the challenge because hardship builds character.
Hardship builds character, and also it's I think every time, if you think at the worst situation you were in, and then when you overcome that, and then you see it, you're like, hey, I grew from that situation. I overcame it, and it's easier to say once it's over with, but
when you're going through it,
it's gonna be bad. But that's human. That's the human experience.
Yeah.
But
No,
yeah.
I agree. It actually, because of everything that I have gone through, and the people that I care about and been close to have gone through hardships. I always say you're somebody's worst, and that's something I constantly keep telling people, because a lot of times, when we were young, we were told somebody has it worse than you. We always heard that, but I'm like, no, bro, you're somebody's worst, because the fact that you're making it, the fact that you're overcoming all the obstacles that come your way is the blueprint for somebody to navigate and get through. Which you might find easy is life and death for somebody else. It's subjective, Struggle is subjective, because what you find struggling, I might find easy. What I find easy, you might find struggling.
Not only that, but there's the very interesting phenomenon, which is something that now I really try to pay attention to as much as possible, which is you never know what. So there's two things. You always have your self-image. There's a different version of you inside everybody you meet, because my experience with you is not going to be the same with the young lady on the other side of the room, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the main things is that, and secondary, which is parallel to the same, you don't know what someone's going through, so act accordingly, which is one of those things that more and more I've been trying to incorporate that in, as much as possible. But
that's hard. Like it takes discipline. It takes discipline to do that.
It's a discipline, because there's always going to be a prejudice to want to put yourself first, and also how you are, and there's things that you've gone through that it's going to affect your judgment and how you relate to people. But that's part of being human. You got to change it around as much as possible.
So as you said, judgment. So let's tap into there, because being that you're a tattoo artist and an artist firsthand and a tattoo artist, a lot of times they'll see our ink, such as my ink, and there's judgment that comes along with it. So what made you get into tattooing, something that was considered to be so taboo?
I want to say it was serendipity. I was working at a Blockbuster Video literally down the street from here on 152nd and 137th.
Woo, we're talking. Listen,
ago.
For y'all who don't know, because some of our viewers are, Gen Z, Blockbuster was our Netflix. Okay, that was our Netflix.
It was not only that, but it's like basically if you worked at a Blockbuster Video, like you made or broke someone's night, because that's it. A good night was literally going. If you were a little kid, your best night was your parents taking you to Blockbuster, renting you 2 video games, your parents renting movies, got the free popcorn, got the chips, got the soda. You might get a little toy and go home. Good date. What was it? Let's go back to my house and watch some movies. So it was very interesting. And malls were very. This is the beginnings of internet culture, I want to say. It was not as prevalent back then. It was still like, God, when I came in like 56K, and then obviously T1, T2 connections, et cetera, but people got together and watched movies, and that's what it is. And I left that industry right when Netflix came out, and I remember because I was there for the meeting where the general manager and the regional manager sat there very haughtily and told us, internet connections will never catch up to the point where people will be able to rent movies online.
Wow. Yeah, because for y'all who don't know, Netflix was through the mail. Yeah. You had to get it through the mail. Well, it wasn't online yet.
Not only that, but Blockbuster at one point was offered, and they declined it, and I watched it burn. And it's funny now, because now Blockbuster is such a thing, and it's such a retro thing that people want to bring back in a weird way. There's a person that has a Blockbuster in their basement. There's an Airbnb with it's a Blockbuster theme.
They made a show in Alaska, the last Blockbuster.
Well,
I still have my card, by the way, too.
I think I may still have my name tag and my T-shirt, and I think I may still have cover boxes and movies. I don't know, but either way. So I was working there. I left there to work at Original Impressions, which is a print shop behind the Falls, which one of their main clients, they were at one point the print arm of Burger King. So at the time, if you saw the menu when the Chicken Whopper launched, I was the one that proofread. So basically, I made sure that everything was, attention to detail, et cetera, et cetera. It was a great job, but it was a very, if you've seen the movie Fight Club, it was that job where you were just... Yeah. And actually, you know what? A more common example would be, what's that movie where the guy goes crazy and he works at an office? Office Space.
Office Space, yeah.
It was Office Space.
When he's hypnotized.
I lived that job. But I love it because everything happens for a reason. A lot of later on things that would help me out in the art world was the fact that I knew the print process. And I knew the old school print process and, again, the attention to detail of being a proofreader. So at the time, one of the guys in the back was getting tattooed in a house.
How old were you at this point?
I must have been like 26, 25. I came in late. Okay. So I came in late into tattooing. Usually if you started very early. So I met the person that had the shop in their house, and then from there I got let go from the print job. A job came in that I had to proofread in 3 days, and I missed one little column. It came in on the wrong font, kicked over the job, and a $30,000 job had to be reprinted. They stuck me in a They stuck me in a small room with a photocopier and a very angry lady that made my life very not nice. And I was like, yeah, I lasted, I think, a week. And so in corporate jobs like that, they fire you on a Friday. So if you do anything crazy,
you ain't coming back to the office
until Monday. And by then usually they got security, right? So whatever, it happened. And by then I was actually moonlighting. I would go to this person's house and I would draw, because before I did that in college, I did I was in the school newspaper. So I think in 97 or 98, I won third in the nation for cartooning. And I could draw on the fly. So if you told me, hey, we need this, that, and the other, I could draw it. And since we had newspaper deadlines, which are usually we printed on the week, so I knew that I had to get it done that day or within 2 days. So I did that, and I, always kept my foot in the arts. And, I had a Japanese animation column in the school newspaper in Miami-Dade. So I had all these things that were to my advantage in that sense. So it was literally like I came in, I showed this guy what I could do. He was like, hey, do you want to make extra money? And I was making 10% of everything that was drawn. So I was literally parallel incoming. And then the ideal of working that job, when I saw the possibility of the other job, and I got let go from the print shop, and that person told me, hey, we're going to open up a shop. And then from there we went to open up. We opened up the shop, and that was, I gave that my all. I remember we would work. There was weeks where we worked every day, where I would sleep at the shop, go home, shower, and then come back, because we had that much clientele, and the tattoo industry was booming. It was 20 years ago. I did. And then from there, like I said, we, I think 5 or 6 years later, I partnered in, and then, kept it going for all those years, and actually maybe a little bit later. My timetable's a little bit off, but
it comes with the age, bro. We're getting up there.
Yeah. So I spent 2 decades in industry. I spent, a decade and some change co-owning a shop. And then parallel to that, always did the art career. The good thing about the tattoo field is that you meet a lot of artists. So I got to meet artists up and coming. I mean, like, I met Alex Yanez when he first started out, Raul Santos, a bunch of Goop, Angel Once, JC Rivera, Nico.
Mega people.
Yeah. We had a guy, Nico Romero, that introduced me to Jeff Decal. Bunch of really like beginning artists, the Butter Gallery, very cool stuff. And that literally kept me, motivated. I mean, tattooing took up a lot of time, but then when I was able to shift gears, I had it ingrained that I had seen my peers where they had gone in the art world, and that definitely, kept me motivated. And, I was able to reach out to a lot of people like, hey, how do you know this person? I'm like, from when they were first around, they got tattooed with us, that was a big thing.
The tattoo politics, for you guys to understand, in the tattoo world, is very intimate with your artist. It's very intimate as a community. Like, how we have barber talk? We have tattoo shop. And, with that, I want to ask you, Miami, there's a culture when it comes to tattooing in Miami. And to me, you're one of the forefathers of that, especially in Kendall.
I mean, I'm going to give it its respect. Even before us, you had, Lucia Barris, you had Fat Joe, you had Merlin's Tattoo, you had Ken Cameron, you had Louis Segato.
Paying homage.
Of course. You had Circus Tattoo. And you had all these guys, Emerson Forth, you had all these guys that set the groundwork, Bison Tattoos, JFK Down South, so many artists. But the West Kendall, at one point, the shop that I was in was one of the farthest west, because we were on 152 and Miller. Mm-hmm. So there was definitely that, and there was at the time, you had the people that got the tribal tattoos, you had the people that got the realistic tattoos, you got the guys that got the traditional tattoos, you had new school tattoos.
I would never forget the tribal tattoos. Those tattoos, listen, you know how everyone talks about like the tattoos, like the tramp stamp? Yeah. Okay, the tribal tattoos took a hold of an entire generation.
Look, man.
If you were a teenager in the 90s, chances are you have a tribal tattoo.
That, or I think for me, one of the craziest things were the guys that were in the motorcycle cultures that got the male tramp stamp as a tribal.
Yeah.
Which I was like, are you sure you want that? No, on the bottom. Remember, so when their shirts would fly up, they'd have a tribal tattoo when they're on the motorcycle. The speed bike guys.
Oh my God! Listen, as a biker myself, there was we all go through points in life where we don't make the best decision. Yeah. So there was an era where if you saw a dude on a sports bike and his shirt was fluttering, he had a lower back tattoo.
Yeah. Yeah, that
just
was
like the women do. And,
Yeah.
and even the belly button
So-
at one point too with the Cisco.
Yeah.
I think.
So it's funny because now it's come full circle, and those tattoos are not only back as, in a weird way, blackouts, which is completely down, or now with cybersigillism, which is a abstracted, in my opinion, an abstracted version of a 90s tribal, or has its roots in it. And, you know, kids are doing it now. So it's a very interesting thing, the way it is. And again, I'm very grateful for what you said, but there was, before even me and before us, walked giants in the tattoo world, because there was artists that were holding down the South Florida tradition. I'll never forget, I went to a convention, and apparently and I'm sure this opinion has changed much now, because we do have so many good artists down here, that proper tattooing stopped at Jacksonville at a shop named Ink Smith and Rogers, which is a great shop. But, you know, 2 decades now, there's so many good artists down here. I mean, like, in my opinion, one of the best portrait artists was Pride, God rest his soul. And he was down here, and he was holding it down. So we had a bunch of good guys. Now we got guys like Jid and Fat Mac and, you know, Dave Gonzalez, you know, Tony. There's so many now, and it's part of that. And
they all had their different take on it too.
Different takes, and then on top of that, just different traditions. And I think everybody, I think one of the coolest things about that world, and, you know, everybody has their opinion, everybody brings their own tradition. It's like, I feel like tattooing in a good way, one of the positive sides of it, because there's multifaceted things to tattooing, but it's like a potluck dinner. Everybody brings their own thing, and there's some, you know, some stuff that's not the best, but some stuff that's really cool, and it just gives it that thing, you know. Like, I remember that there was a point where, you know, appropriation became a subject in tattooing, and I was like, you know, this is beyond that, in my opinion, because it's a human culture. It's like it's almost like a global phenomenon, if you will.
Yeah,
and that's a good thing.
You see how it's spread across South America, like even in parts of Europe. Like, there's so many artists that are now.
Every time it's so funny, because every time they bring up any kind of body that's been preserved, and 9 times out of 10 it comes up with some sort of body adornment, a body modification, or a tattoo, which is actually really, really interesting to see.
Oh yeah.
So you know, it's cool.
It's what's crazy to me is seeing where it is now. Like, I come from the old school era where it's like, if I have an artist, I'm sticking with that guy. So
yeah,
you know, Yachty did me. Then Yachty got hurt. Yachty had to be, you know, early retired, and then I went over to my friend Ralph, and then Ralph moves to Denver. So it's like, I don't want to keep jumping to people, because I always felt, you know, when you get a tattoo, the artist who worked on you, part of him is going with you, or part of her is going with you. And they can see the major difference between you. Tattooing is so special where 2 artists can draw the same exact picture and they'll still come out different.
Not only that, but and there is. So, for example, for many years, I try to stick with my barber. My barber knew my hair pattern. My barber's seen me. Again, we would have great talks. It was like a therapy session. And, you know, I got to see my barber grow. My barber got to see me grow. And it's funny, because within the tattoo world, there was that. And there was also, it kind of weirdly fluctuated, because it was like, if I knew somebody, for example, if someone asked me to finish work from an existing artist and I gave that artist respect, I'd be like, hey, listen, let me see if I can reach out to that person, or I don't feel comfortable working precisely on that. Can I add somewhere else? You know, and there was always that little bit of respect at one point. Granted, you know, there's the other side to it where, and I don't like to get involved in that too much, but, you know, some people would, some people wouldn't, and that's all right, I get it. But I feel now it's just like, the more tattooing was very closed at one point, and I think now with the advent of social media, the ability to purchase equipment, the fact that it just kind of got decentralized. It's doing this weird thing right now where it's like one half of tattooing is going very corporate. You know, corporations are quietly coming in, and, you know, conglomerates and private entities are coming in and buying. You know, they realize it's $1 billion industry every year, and they're buying out tattoo supplies and buying out shops. And you have the phenomenon of like the mega tattoo shop, which, for lack of a better word, is like the Kmart or the Walmart of shops, where they're, you know, giving you bargain basement work, or it's a huge establishment. So it's kind of like weirdly losing that, but at the same time,
quality over quantity or quantity over quality.
Some of them put out good work, but at the same time, it's like, you know, the other day I bumped into somebody and I was like, wow, that's a nice piece. Who is your artist? And they're like, I don't know. And I was like, whoa, wait, what are you talking about? Like,
wow.
I can't even fathom that, because I remember in my growing up, it's like, you not only could you read somebody's tattoo, I can sit there and be like, this artist did this or
Thank
that.
you
that.
for
Yeah.
your exact. You could be like, yo, I know who did you.
Correct.
And that's the amazing, and I feel like that culture, it's still there, but it needs to be preserved more than ever, because that tattooing is a way to express yourself.
I think all the arts, because, you know, it got to a point where it's like, even in some of the finer arts, it's like, after a while, so a lot of all art is derivative, and this is my opinion, because everything is a copy of a copy of a copy, and good artists know how to steal really well, I'm sorry, and that's okay, you know, that's just the name of the game. But after a while, it just got to the point where it just was so unpersonal. And I think the moment it lost its magic, because a lot of the cool thing about tattooing is the fact that, yeah, you know what, like, there is a story behind I got this, you know, like, it marks a moment, or even the fact that it doesn't mark a moment, but there's that significance to it, you know, like,
it tells a story of a point of your life, or, you know, to me, I remember I had gone, remember the wharf down in downtown.
Yes.
So, you know, I'm there with my friends, and I see a lovely lady there, and I, you know, approach her like Miami would, and giving me the cold shoulder. So you know, you have to think, I was like, oh, I like your trauma. And she's like, excuse me? I'm like, don't worry, I got trauma too.
Yeah.
How are you doing? And it broke the ice in a way where you recognize somebody through their art, and you can see, okay, this is where this person falls in.
Yeah.
And I love that about the community. I wish my parents understood that, but, you know.
Well, you know, it's very interesting, because even I travel a lot down to the Caribbean, specifically the Dominican Republic, and, you know, it's funny to see how some things are still taboo, and one of the main things is tattooing and body modification and the culture of that, and it's like what you were saying, because you can sit there, and especially if you're a tattoo artist, I can sit there and, you know, see a person's tattoo and read their tattoos and see what they're about, or where they, at least, I'm not going to say I know 100%, but at least what they're trying to project that they are about. And I think that's a better way to say it. I'm blessed with that skill, but somebody who does not know, or who is not in the know, may see somebody and be like, oh my gosh, you know, do I have to worry about this person, or is this
They're
that?
oblivious.
They're oblivious, and then they go from the societal norm and the societal mores and the societal opinion, which not necessarily. I've met some really great people in tattooing. I've met some terrible people in tattooing. I've met, you know, the gamut, if you will. And it's very interesting to see how things are, because that's, a lot of people don't realize that, you know, that tattoo may make or break an experience with a person. And like you said, you know, maybe that could have gone on well, and that could have gone maybe not to your favor, and that's a thing.
There's a saying, real recognize real, right?
Yes.
Tattoos, for y'all who may not know, especially depending where you come from, how you grew up, tattoos were also stories that told you about the generation before you. So like my friends on the West Coast, you know, from 18th Street or Watts, my tattoos are completely different because they come from a different era.
Not only that, and not to interrupt you, you're right. Like that is the one thing tattooing that is getting a little bit washed out and a little bit diluted, because before, tattoos did tell a story. Now tattoos, and it's okay, I'm not saying it's anything bad, but a lot of tattoos now are very just ornamental, and, you know, very like, oh, why'd you get that tattoo? Oh, you know, we were banged up at this party, or I was, you know, at this event, or, you know, and I'm like, wow, that's really interesting for me to see, because before, like, for example, if someone was incarcerated, you could read their story in their ink, and, you know, and like under the Russian tradition and the tradition of other countries, you could, and, you know, if you study those traditions, there's a lot of history in tattooing. So you have to, like, if you want to really understand the craft, as far as from the symbolism, you almost have to have a minor in art history, or at least train your brain to
be
study
open and
focus like that, because, you know, even the most simple little thing that you might think is insignificant to a particular culture or to a particular group of individuals may mean something, and that's something that you really should pay attention to.
I had a client, and way older gentleman than us. He's probably has to be in his 70s now.
Okay.
He came with a F100 Ford, one of the old school pickup trucks.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at his tattoos, man, and he's Mexican. I'm like, "You're from 18th Street."
Yeah.
And he smiles at me, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." He's like, "How did you know?" I was like, "Artwork."
Yeah.
So, what generation are you coming out of? And then he lifts up his whole stomach, and
No.
again, you don't have to be from that world. You have to understand it.
And give it its respect.
And exactly.
Yeah.
So when he showed me a shirt, I'm like, "Oh, wow, man. So you were growing up past the Zoots era." He's like, "Man, you know I'm like, I'm fond of the art. It is art at the end of the day."
Yeah, not only that, but you can also tell, like, for example, the difference between something done with a manually crafted machine or somebody with a professional machine, the color of the ink, the era, like you said, the symbolism. There's a lot involved. And I think that's the fact that now, and the good thing now is, like, there's a lot more artists and a lot more individuals that are focused on preserving that history, because for the longest time, tattooing was an oral tradition that was handed down from one to the next, from one to the next. And it was a very secretive, it was a very exclusive community. It was not very inclusive still. And a lot of that is, even though it did open up and it's very wide open now, there is a certain element that wants to have it shift back into that, which my feelings are mixed, because I feel sometimes there's good gatekeeping, and there's gatekeeping that I feel is not necessarily the best, and that's something that if you feel either way about it, hey man, it's a free world right now, but at least myself personally, I think that there's the good way and the bad way, but the fact that at least there's a lot more preservation going on in the sense of, like, at least trying to know I remember when I first started, a lot of the older artists would be like, you got to know your history in tattooing. You got to know your history. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then now, after 2 decades,
drill it in, respect.
Not only that, but parallel into the art world. Like, even in the art community of, one of my favorite artists down here is Purvis Young. Purvis Young was Overtown community. They consider him the Basquiat of that era. Yeah,
Okay.
he would sit around and paint on. You could pick up a Purvis Young, pennies on the dollar type thing, and now he's very, very well collected. There was a lot of good artists. There was, I believe, the Traveling Roadman. I believe there's a series of artists that they would paint. And I could be, I'd have to double check on the name, but there was a series of artists that they would paint just roadsides and just backgrounds and things like that of South Florida. So you have all these wonderful things, and you really have to be in the know and in the dialogue and respect and really, like, know your history. So a lot of what I learned in tattooing, and it's a good thing and a bad thing, because then what it does is, like, it turns you into this crazy hoarder because it's like, hey, you have this thing from this and that and the other, and, like, you don't, like, so I feel like every tattoo artist, at least in my generation, at one point or another, went through their pack rat phase. And I think every artist does. But it comes with the
territory.
It does. I mean, like, I think a lot of curating is basically that. I think the tattoo artists that I really get along well and the artists that I get along well too are in their own light. Like, I think every artist creates their art, but they, like, have this one thing or this one artist that they, like,
inspired them,
and they collect their stuff and they hoard their things and they curate. I mean, like, so that's actually a really cool thing.
Yeah, I mean, the only comparison I could bring it to my life is my bike culture. Being in a bike club, and me for over 22 years, I'm not the safest person. I'm a little extreme, I'm an adrenaline junkie, but I was around it since I was a teenager. Yeah. So I seen how it started, and I seen how it's changed, and I understand the gatekeeping that you're talking about, because yes, there's gatekeeping that I find essential to protect the love for it, but there's gatekeeping that's closed-minded that doesn't allow change that's necessary to it. And I feel that same applies to, artists and tattooing. Yeah. But with that, going into it, we have to talk about it because there's been a major shift. COVID. Tattooing was different before COVID. after COVID, I feel, this is just my opinion,
Yeah.
I feel like it went really commercial.
There's
What's your take on that?
my take is a very like, and this is my opinion on it. So I feel that after COVID, so I was around for the pandemic. I was here. I got to go through the lockdown. It affected my business. I got sick with COVID. I got to experience it. I was blessed enough to not be at I almost made it to the point of having to be intubated. Thankfully, I was not.
Amen.
Amen. Yeah. And I got to see how it affected. And then, post-COVID, it was kind of like, not even post-COVID, but when the world opened back up again, then it was like, hey, where's this person? Oh, they're dead. Oh, how's this person? Oh, they're intubated. They'll be dead. Oh, how's this other person? Well, they had to get, something cut off or this, that, and the other. So it was this weird, we went through a lot. I think that we still, as a
There's
world,
a lot of trauma, man.
I don't think we've healed. It brought out sometimes the best in people, and then some people turned into they just did not care. And how did it affect tattooing? I saw artists that I looked up to, pass away. I saw artists that were on top of the world not have a penny on them. I saw people, not continue getting the work. I saw people fill themselves up completely. I saw the influx of and ignorant tattooing and just like a, for lack of a better word, fuck it style, was definitely always there. But I see more of it now, post-COVID. And I think it's weird. It was one of the it's so funny. Today is 9/11, and I remember the world during that time. Yeah.
With that being said, take a moment for the victims of 9/11.
Yep.
Man, that was how many? It's been over 20 years now. How many?
Yep. So it was interesting when I saw the world reset from that, and then I remember the reset that is the pandemic, and I think it did affect the industry a lot. And not only that, it was just one of those. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm listening.
It's just one of those things that, again, it changed the landscape of what was the tattoo culture in my world, and in my opinion. And it'll be interesting to see how it is, because what are we, 2 years out from pandemic? Just about, right?
Yeah. And then what I have noticed about it is one of the things that made me find tattoo artists so admirable is your artist. You could sometimes come with a piece and he's like, no. And I know it sounds like, oh, well, it's my body doing it, but this is a person who's worked on you and knows when you're not in the right mind state versus when you're just emotional. And after COVID, a lot of emotions ran high, and a lot of people, because they needed the money before, like, have you, even yourself as an artist, has there ever been times that you had to work on a client that you honestly didn't want to put that on them and you knew they weren't going to be happy because they were just in their feelings?
I used to be Jiminy Cricket. In my beginning of my career, I remember I'd have, people that want to come in and get, their lover's name, or, kids wanting to get dumb stuff like
Thug Life. AK-47 on my neck. Yeah.
MOB, Thug Life, your homie's gang that you got into, and now whatever, all this stuff. Stuff that was going to get you in trouble down the line, know, and I mean, like, I was, hey, I did those things, it was what it was, because after a while I started realizing that you can't save everybody, and you can't be Jiminy Cricket, because I remember there was a point where I was like that. I was very like vehement about it, like, hey, you know what, I'm not going to do this and blah, blah, blah. And then I'd see the people, I'm like, oh, wait, you got that? And they're like, yeah, well, you wouldn't do it. And I was like, that's money out of my pocket. So to a certain degree, I'm very like, I call myself a free will salesman. I'm one of those people. I'm probably one of the worst salesmen when it comes to certain things, because I'll be like, hey, look, dude, this is a tattoo. When you're ready for it, hit me up. Are you ready for it now? Are you sure about this? Hey, you know what? This is my opinion on it. This is what it is. There's stuff that I'll do, like, if, for example, like, if the project is out of my reach or my scope, hey, I'll curate the best person for it. In my opinion, I'll sit there like a wine sommelier. I'll be like, hey, this is the person that I feel the most strongly.
That takes noble, and that takes strength, because a lot of people, will hold on to that. Not every artist is
Look,
like
man, if I tell you that shirt is cool on you
Mm-hmm.
and you look like a jackass, you can take it off and not listen to my opinion the next time. If you tattoo that, now you're lucky. Now you got a lot of great laser guys out there, you know, that'll take that out, and you know it's gonna suck, but it'll be out. But before, you know, hell's bells. So I'd rather be on the side of it. And you know what? It's better for you to sit there and get something. I'm still part of the process. I helped you, you know, get to your desired goal and what you wanted. But at the same time, I don't feel comfortable just being like, oh yeah, you know, like, oh, you want a realistic portrait of this, that, the other. Oh yeah, sure, I can do it. No, it's out of my envelope. I'm cool with it. And honestly, like I said, for a decade, I co-owned a shop. So for me, it's very simple to be like, hey man, let me get that artist for you. I'm still good. In my head, it's just the same thing as making the percentage. So I'm still going to make my percent. I have a great network of tattoo artists that I trust, that I like I personally like their work. So it's not just me telling you, go with this guy. It's like, no, I like their stuff. I'll help you throughout the process. And I think that's a thing. But as far as like how you were asking me, have I gotten very like that? Not so much anymore. There's things like, for example, I would never do like any kind of supremacist tattoo on you. I wouldn't do anything that I feel is against, like, for example, I wouldn't put the name of God in you on you in Arabic. I think that's a little bit, that's going to get you in trouble. It's not, there's things that I won't do.
You won't associate yourself with something that goes against your moral compass.
Not even my moral compass, just things that I just like, hey man, like, just, that's not my vibe, if you will, like, and that's, I think, and you know,
you got to respect that though.
No, not only, I feel so, but at the same time, there's also people that, like, they don't know any better. Like, hey, you know what? You got to remember, like, remember 10 years ago what you thought was cool.
Don't do that to me, man. Don't do that to me. Listen, I had issues. I had issues, man. I was heavy influenced by Tupac, Biggie, the West Coast. If I had not had people like you or, you know, or my peers, the OGs in my life, listen, face tattoos will be the last thing I would have to worry about. The type of tattoos that I was really wanting to indulge in would reshape the direction of my life.
But you know, it's like I tell everybody, like, I'll see people, like, I remember that the and it's funny because this tattoo that Tupac, everybody swears it's an AK, it's actually a 22. You know, it's a folding stock 22 that he has tattooed right here. So a lot of people would want to get a Tupac tattoo and MOB and all that stuff, and I'm like, yo, that's really cool. I go, but why are you getting it? Are you that big of a Tupac fan? You know what I'm saying? Because if you are, hey,
it's
man,
respectable.
Get it. Absolutely.
Like,
you know,
his name is Lisanne Parrish Crooks. I am a diehard fan.
Correct.
And a lot of people don't even know what thug life means. They think it means thug's life. It's no, the hate you show the children fucks the world.
Exactly.
You and that's where I feel I understand the gatekeeping in tattoo world, where that could piss off certain artists because they respect the meaning of those tattoos, and you have a noob coming in.
But at the same time, I've tattooed the Ultra logo, the Avicii logo, the Insane Clown Posse Hatchet Man. There's so many things.
Wow.
So you got to remember, like, and again, this is what I tell everybody. Are you doing it because you like the artist, or are you trying to pass yourself off as something you are not? Or do you think this is part of that aesthetic? So these are things that no one's really thinking about that at that time.
Nope.
And it's not my job to think for you. I can recommend it to you because there's a difference between you being a client and you being a friend, and there's both of that. So as a client and as a friend, I can tell you, hey, look, dude, that's a cool idea. However, I don't, you know, but if this is something you feel that strongly about, and you know the beauty about what I do, have you seen the movie The Matrix? You ever seen how when Neo dodges the bullets and he goes like that? Tattoo artists, we're kings of that. Because the moment that it's something that I feel uncomfortable about, hey, there's another artist I can recommend you to. There's this, that, and the other. You know, there's a myriad of ways of politely exiting out of a situation. And sometimes you got to stand your ground and be like, hey, look, I don't want to do this. And sometimes it's really like not necessarily the best, but at least, you know, you're being about your convictions, and, you know, you live to fight another day. And that I've been blessed. I've had less than more of those situations. I've been able to gracefully, like, hey, let me, you know, put you with somebody that's going to really get a kick out of doing this work, and, you know, is going to be awesome. And I think you guys, and hey, we're cool and stuff like that. Hit me up for something that maybe I'll vibe a little bit better, or I feel a little bit stronger about, and that's okay.
I love that, man.
That's the best. I mean, like in the end, man, like,
I mean, essentially, you gave me my artist.
There you go. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And believe it or not, man, I'm still mad that he, had to be retired early, but it's like
Yachty was a great mentor. He was, I still call him. We still have a good dialogue.
I still deal with his son, Junior.
Yeah. Junior's a great guy. You guys work together, right?
No. I did his car. I tricked it out.
That's right. He just celebrated his birthday, funny enough, I think like a week ago.
Happy belated, my G.
There you go. So, no, Yachty gave me a lot of my formative years. I was very blessed to have very good people around me. I had very good mentors in what to do and what not to do, which is really, really cool. Yachty had a particular style, and he was very well known within his community. And even outside of that, he was another one who was well known in nightlife in the early, I want to say in the early 80s. And
Miami.
Yeah,
style.
early 80s. And I think Yachty came in the Marielle. So the Marielle boat lift was
85, 84,
something like that. So he came in that era, and he's a spring of information when it comes from that era of Miami, which is interesting. So I got to meet a lot of interesting people through him. And it was like I said, man, it was actually pretty cool that I was able to do that. And he had his time, and now he's on to chilling out and grilling and cooking and doing
his
things.
Life as
Amen.
he should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Man.
Yes,
as he should.
Yes.
Okay. So, before we close out, brother, I got some questions for you.
Sure, man.
Okay. Now, mind you, you're, to me, a staple in this culture.
Oh, thank you so much.
Staple, highly respected. I know you love being an artist. So, if money wasn't an issue, what would you like to be doing right now at this moment?
So that's a very interesting question at this point. If money wasn't an issue, I think I would continue traveling, studying cultures, studying the traditions of different artists in different realms, the tattoo world, the fine art world, the current art world. I think that's where I would be at, just having a lot more experiences. Is if I can say anything about this time in my life, I'm very focused on experiences. I'm very focused on See, I love Miami. I love where I'm from, but this is the problem with Miami. When you're in Miami, you swear up and down that the world is literally from where the sun comes up to where the sun goes down. So we get very insular, and we swear that that's all there is. And,
Amen on that.
In the past couple of years, I've been able to visit the West Coast, visit New York. I'm in the Dominican Republic at least 3 to 4 times since I've been 40 now. I've made it a point to visit and experience. And, a lot of me now is considering now, what do I have to do to jump across the pond? What's happening in Europe? What's it like? And I just met a couple from Ghana. And they got some work done with me, and I'm like, what do you do in Ghana? And they're like, hey, we're architects and interior designers. And I'm looking at their work. I go, this is amazing. And they're like, yeah, Ghana has a really big movement towards modernization and architecture. And I was like, this is amazing. How did I not know about this? And they're like, hey, well, you got to come and visit. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Or like, for example, I have a friend, she's an artist in Vienna. So she's telling me, like, this is what Vienna's like. And then I have a person who was one of the artists that began to learn at Mark when I had the shop. And he's in Spain now. He's one of the leading portrait artists in Spain. And he's like, hey, you got to come over here. And, I have a friend in Italy. And the world's so much bigger. And then, when you start seeing how you live your life here, and then some of the things, and then you start traveling. Look, I went to Anaheim. And I was in Anaheim, California. I was visiting friends, and, it was cool. I went for a week. So in that entire week, I got to experience the day-to-day of my friend's life. And, I went to like a swap meet, and then I went to, I experienced some of the culture from, the Mexican culture down there. I got to go to Long Beach. I got to go to downtown LA. On another trip, I hung out literally only in downtown LA and got to see what that's like, and live with my friend that's a high fashion photographer. So there's so much out there. And, it's like sometimes we just get so bogged up, and it's like the weekend you spent in Miami that you spent $300 is your plane ticket and just telling a homie, hey, do you mind if I crash on your couch? And
say it louder, please.
No, it's the truth.
Say it louder, please.
It's the truth.
I try to tell my friends that all the time. Look, you don't have to go big, but you have to start. Life here in Miami is a bubble if you're not careful. Yeah. When I'm in California, you know, I was working, you know, during COVID, I was working all over the United States. So when I went to California, a lot of Miami people like, Jay, you seem like you're from California. When I got to California, I'm not from California.
You know, you sit there in California and you know this, like, for example, you'll be in Cali, and Cali's very interesting because it depends where you're at and it's very separated. So I got to experience Anaheim and I got to experience downtown LA. So in LA, I was on Olympic Boulevard. I was staying at the old Federal Reserve that they turned into loft apartments, and it's an entire colony of artists from the 60s to high fashion photographers to a dude that did adult. And I got to live that life to literally like walk down to my buddy Junkyard LA studio and see how he's making his art, then go to the fashion district, go to this place that was
awesome.
Yeah, go to like this like hall cafeteria that had a guy that was opening up a Hawaiian food restaurant, got to try masubi, like, and that was that experience. And then I went to Anaheim and got to experience like the suburbs, which was mad cool. I got to go to this comic book store that the guy had like literally everything. I went to a swap shop that was predominantly Mexican American, and dude,
same thing.
I got to have records for $2, like hang out, like it was such a cool thing. So
it's an experience that, believe it or not, it opens you to new ideas. Like it's almost like a video game that unlocks the extra archives that you have to complete in a different mode. So when you travel, you're actually embracing your full potential, in my opinion.
I'm gonna tell you this: one of the craziest things flying into LA and being in Anaheim and everything. If you play the game GTA 5, it's literally like. Those dudes did such a good job on that game that when I flew into that, I was like, and there was parts of the neighborhood. I have a buddy of mine that he lives in Little Thailand, and I'm like, so he did me the favor of driving me around and showing me everything. I go, this literally looks like the game. I don't want to sound like
he took you to the bench. He took you to
everything. No, everything. Wow. I got to walk check out the Griffith Park Observatory. I walked that entire park. I got to see the old Batmobile cave from the 60s. I literally got to see all we walked down the hills, like literally where all the parties are. It's crazy because everywhere you go in LA, and the cool thing about it, much like here, everywhere you turn is a picture. Same thing. And it's a really interesting thing because here it's constantly hot. The moment the sun dips in LA, it's 76 at night. It's like 60 some odd.
Crazy, bro.
Now I understand why they dress in layers.
Yeah, man. Yeah. When I was in San Jose, Salinas, which is their hood, and I was working at Unify. Yeah. And they're like, "Where's your sweater?" I'm like, "What are you talking about, bro? It's freaking like 80. It's like 87 degrees outside." As soon as I come out, I was like, "Oh, yo, it's like freaking 50 almost." And I'm like, yo.
In downtown LA, I was there in July, and I'll never forget. The old Federal Reserve is literally an old building. It's drafty in there in certain parts, and I'm staying there, and I'm like, so my friend did me the favor of lending me his spare bedroom, and I'm like, dude, it gets cold in here. He goes, yeah, you brought a jacket. I'm like, yeah, I've been sleeping with it for the past couple of days because it was, but it's a great experience.
Oh, always. Okay.
All right.
So my last question to you is, if you can go back in time and start over knowing what you know now, would you choose the same path that you're on now?
I think the only thing I would change, I think I've been given so many cool experiences, a great life. I would just be I'd be a little bit more concerned about getting everything on paper, being a little bit more concise with just giving myself a little bit of something to fall back on. And what I mean by that is the sense of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. I would do everything the same. I would just be a little bit more formal with certain things. I think that's very important. I think as artists, sometimes we get away from that, just in our nature. But I think that's it. But I think I've had a blessed experience. I would just be a little bit more on the eye of that. But besides that, I mean, I've had a great experience. I mean, I've been able to do a lot of really cool things, and I have a lot more coming. And it's funny because there's times where you see your life and you're like, oh, my life is so plain Jane or whatever. And there's dudes that'll tell you like, yo, you know, like I wish I had your life. And I'm like, I wish I had yours. So it's like this constant experience. So that's about it, man. But I really don't have any complaints much. So
I like that, man. I really do.
Cool,
really
man. Right on.
So
yeah,
please tell them where they can find you.
So if you want to see my art on social media, I'm on Instagram as rabbits305. You can check me out over there. And from there, if you want to shoot me a DM, always available for a dialogue. And from there, most of my socials are available. Check it out.
I'll make sure to tag your social in the link when I put this up.
Absolutely. Thank you. And then, I mean, I'm easy to find, man. I mean, if you've been in this neighborhood long enough, I mean, one person that knows how to get a hold of me.
We're what you call a neighborhood legend. That's you.
Oh, thank you, man. No,
with all due respect, it's the truth.
Thank you so much for saying that. Truth. Thank you.
And make sure, guys, if this is your first time, you hit that like and subscribe button. More content on the way. And as you know, this is one thing for sure, two things for certain. Holla.